Good day, everyone. My name is Bob Sjogren. I am the director of the Casa Grande Alliance, the new director of the Casa Grande Alliance, and we have a presentation for you today that will talk about substance use disorder, stress, and justice involvement. And we have a wonderful panel of experts for you from Superior Court judge to treatment and recovery providers, to a lot of people that just genuinely care about people. So we're really looking forward to hearing from them. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the numbers, substance use disorder, definitions. We're going to talk about stress, and then the legal system, courts, treatment, and recovery. So I think as we're kind of getting into the beginning of this, I think the thing that is absolutely positively most important for you to think about is, you are in high school and you are thinking about the rest of your life, and you're identifying goals and you're creating a vision for your future. And, I think there's a lot of promise on the horizon. And what we really want to talk about today is choice, and what kind of choice you make, and what that does to your body physically, and how it impacts the way you think and feel and behave. So let's get to it, but I really want you to think about this choice thing. um, so uh, Substance use definitions, and I think this is a really helpful framework to think about. Use is typically when you're taking over-the-counter medications or you get prescriptions when you're sick. Misuse is taking those prescriptions and giving them to other people, or getting them from yourself, or heaven forbid you get a hold of illegal drugs, but that's really kind of misuse. Uh, the next stage, as far as I'm concerned, is dependency. Something happens, you like the feeling of it, you want more of it, and the more you do of it, the more you want of it. So it's really hard to get enough of a good thing. So that dependency, it becomes part of your cycle. It becomes part of your daily or weekly routine. And when that happens and it really gets established, it really kind of turns into addiction. Abuse, on the other hand, is where uh, your use adversely affects the health of the user. It high social or personal costs, failure to fulfill a major role, like with school or work or family, reoccurrent physical hazards. You may be in danger. It may result in legal problems, and it increases your personal and social problems. So that abuse thing is really tricky, and it's really hard. And once you kind of go down that path, it's really challenging to return. So just a few numbers today, and I think this one just really blows me away. In 2020, substance use disorder and mental illness surpassed all physical diseases as a major cause of disability worldwide. So it's like a huge problem all over the planet. An estimated 23.5 million Americans aged 12 and older needed treatment for an illicit drug or alcohol use problem in 2009. Almost 1 out of every 10 people in the United States of America. I think the biggest fact on this screen that makes me really concerned is that half of all of the lifetime mental illness and substance use disorder cases begin at age 14, and 3/4 begin at age 24. So wait a minute, think about that for a minute. Half of all of the cases of mental illness and substance use disorder begin by age of 14. 3/4 begin by the age of 24. Wow, that's staggering. So these years that you're living right now are some of the most important years of your life in lots of ways. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I think the other thing I think that's really encouraging is that 2/3 of the people in America can really believe that this problem can be solved and that we can figure out a better way to do things. And I want to talk a little bit about that today. So you know what's out there, you know what's on the street, you know what people are using, and prescription drugs can be included in this as well, but it's really quite alarming, especially given that this is considered a high-intensity drug trafficking area by the HIDTA group, which is the multi-jurisdictional law enforcement group that works on drug interdiction. Another thing, why do people start misusing? It feels good. There are, great euphoric initial effects. Sometimes with some drugs, it can improve your performance in the short term. In the short term, uh, people are curious, it eases distress. It makes a little space in your life. You don't feel quite as stressed out. It helps reduce anxiety, or maybe it helps you de-stress. And I think another thing that it can become very easily is that as you experience adversity in your life, which all people do, it becomes easier and easier to run and hide behind whatever that substance is. It could be alcohol, it could be vape, it could be, just about anything. Interestingly enough, people with mental disorders are at far greater risk of substance dependency or abuse. People with mental disorders. Wow, that's amazing. So couple that with your age range right now, and it just really seems to me that you're at the most risk in your life in the next few years. So how does it really impact youth? Use, misuse turns into dependence. It becomes a habit, and then that dependence turns into addiction. Think about the smoker. It's like you try it a couple of times, you try it a little more, and all of a sudden you're addicted to nicotine, and you can't figure out how it happened, and then you can't figure out how to get out of it. So it's just kind of a crazy loop. But how does it impact youth? Um, uh, Decreases school performance for sure. Increases problems with memory, attention, decision making, interferes with brain development. Our brains are not fully developed until we're about 28. Substance use or substance misuse can trigger a stress response. And stress responses can also trigger substance misuse. So that's a really kind of a dangerous cycle as well. It increases people's feelings of shame and guilt. And it makes daily living more difficult. You can become socially isolated and distanced from your friends and family, and it can lead to abuse and even worse. Interesting. Here's a great thing about stress. We're talking about adversity. Some stress in life is good. Stress that, the stress that you feel when you're getting prepared for a test, or the stress that you feel that when you're working on a big assignment. Some of that stress is really motivating and helps you achieve many, many things. But then there comes to a point where you just got a little too stressed, and you just become exhausted, and you're overloaded. And as you have that perception in your head, it then can turn into burnout, breakdown, anxiety, panic, and anger. And I think what we're really talking about here is the stress response system. Think about it. The human body has so many different systems, like the vascular system, the muscles, the blood capillary system, the nervous system. The body also has a stress response system. And what happens when that stress response system is overactivated because there's too much stress or there's burnout is that it physically changes the way people act, it changes the way people think, and it changes the way that people feel. Here's a brain scan of a stressed out brain on the right of this picture. On the left is a scan of a normal brain, and you see where all of the red is in this brain. All of the red is up in the top part of the brain, which is in the frontal cortex, which is responsible for our executive function, where we make decisions from, and how we reflect on life, and goal setting, and all of those kinds of things. And on the right is a stress brain, and you see where all of the activity is in this brain, and it's in the back of the brain, which is kind of the most primitive part of the brain. That's kind of the fight, flight, or freeze center. So it reduces life into just those kinds of things, and it really is really kind of a fear-based way that people live. Overactivated stress response systems. People are irritable, they're angry, they're reactive, poor focus, they're self-centered. They become really hostile very easily. Think about the Hulk being an overactivated stress response system. When you practice positive self-regulation, when you think about it and de-stress and become calm and really focus on what you want and what your goals are and what kinds of choices you can make to get to your goals. In this space, you're really intentional and you're empathetic and you're flexible and you make good choices. You're goal focused, you're generous, you communicate. You share your thoughts and feelings with others. So think about it, the Hulk or Bruce Banner, overactivated stress response system, or positive self-regulation. So we identified all of these terms earlier: use, misuse, dependence, addiction, abuse. And I think this is a really interesting continuum to think about. And really, I think there are two critical times in the lifespan of misusing drugs, or using drugs and then misusing drugs, is when that occasional misuse, doing it every once in a while, when that transfers into this dependence thing where you have to do it every week or you have to do it every day. And as your body learns this new cycle, then this is something where you can really fall into addiction. And when you fall into addiction, things change physiologically in the body. Things change very dramatically. So that's trouble. And if you're between the ages of 14 and 24 and you're experimenting and this kind of stuff happens, it's something that will be with you the rest of your life. The other thing I'll say is that folks in this state of abuse, it then becomes this daily behavior where you have to seek the high, where you just got to do it. And if you run out of money, you start looking for alternative ways to get money, and sometimes those things aren't legal, so big problems. So what we're going to talk about today, and we have a whole bunch of presenters for you that are going to give some quick bites on their thoughts and their observations in what they see working with people throughout this system, is they're going to talk about the impact of systems on individuals. They're going to talk about what happens to the people that have to go through this system, that engage with this system, where they get charged with crime and they go to court and then there's a penalty, they go to jail, they go to prison, they're on probation. There's a lot of really, really hard experiences down the road for people that choose this path. And I think the other thing to really recognize, when folks genuinely get addicted to drugs and they come out of prison, they go into treatment. If they get out of treatment, they go into recovery and they spend the rest of their lives recovering. So that could look like Alcoholics Anonymous, or that could Narcotics Anonymous or something like that. So they need support for the rest of their lives to stay out of trouble, to stay out of this deep, dark hole called addiction. Here's some examples of people that have been through the system, kind of before and after shots. And you can see the changes to their complexion. You can see the changes in the look in their eyes. You can see lots and lots of physical changes in these faces. And the thing that you got to recognize is those physical changes change in the brain, change in the body as well, and it changes the way people think, feel, and behave. Again, I ask the question, which path will you choose? So right now we're going to hear from some of Pinal County's greatest people, some real experts in their fields, and they're going to share their thoughts and opinions about all of this with you. So sit back, relax, listen closely, and I'd like you to listen for something in particular, and that is, just like, what does the system do to people? How do people respond to it? How do people react? I think that's such an important thing. And then when they're all finished talking, then we'll have a couple of slides to wrap up. So here we go. Enjoy the show, everyone. Again, good afternoon, everyone. Today we have our Pinal County Attorney, Kent Volkmer, here to talk with us a little bit today.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. My name's Kent Volkmer. I am the Pinal County Attorney. For those of you who don't know what that means, essentially I am the lead prosecutor for Pinal County, and we also are the civil advisors for all of our various departments, including the Sheriff's Office.
So first of all, can you give us a sense of what the criminal justice numbers look like in Pinal County?
So I do have a little bit of good news in that regard. For about the last 10 years, on average, our office gets about 5,000 potential felony charges submitted to our office. Only about 2,500 of those are actually charged as felonies, and those are adult felonies. Juveniles, we actually use a little different process. We have some direct routes to try and kind of divert kids and young, adolescent children out of the criminal justice system, try not to go before the court.
Gotcha. Thank you. So the next question is, how many cases involve substance misuse, dependency, and abuse?
So I kind of categorize that differently. So there are those offenses, felony offenses, that are exclusively for possession of drugs for sale, for transportation, those type of things. That's about 40% of all of those felonies. So I told you it was about 2,500. There's about 1,000 of those cases, excuse me, every year that we bring. But if you sort of open that up a little bit and you talk about those offenses that are committed while they're under the influence, or if you consider those offenses that are committed in furtherance of the addiction, we get almost 80% of all felony charges. So you're looking at about 2,000 cases, or 80% of all of our filings are either direct drug related, under the influence when they occurred, or were in furtherance. So it's a major issue in our community.
Gotcha. In the earlier slides, we talked a little bit about adverse childhood experience and childhood trauma, and just how that kind of maybe differently wires the brain, and what kinds of observations might you make about folks or even youth involved in the criminal justice process?
My observations are that the vast majority of people who suffer from substance abuse disorder don't want to. What happens is they usually at a younger age started using substances to deal with stress. So they get stressed out, so maybe they go smoke a joint, or they pop a pill, or they do something else. And what happens is that starts this process where when they become adults, and when you're 20 or 22 or 24 or 40, what happens is when you are at that really high stress, you go back to your comfort zone. And your comfort zone you were committing, or you sort of formulated as a young man or a young woman, and you get high. So what I see is these when people get stressed, they go back to using. And that's unfortunately a lot of what I see in this capacity. I think all of us, every adult has their routine or their go-to when they're stressed. Mine's terrible. I love to eat, and I love to eat sweets, and I love to eat junk food. We all have our different mechanisms. That's just, in my opinion, that's human nature. It's just those that used early in their life and continue to use to deal with it. That's what they continue to do later in life. And while I might put on a couple pounds, I don't run the risk of going to jail or developing a true dependency. That's my biggest concern really with drugs.
Yeah, absolutely true. So I guess to me, stress is pretty much unavoidable, and it happens, and it's a part of life. And what really becomes important is positively and proactively managing the stress in our lives. And I guess I'd like to ask you a question. They say that one of the best ways to relieve stress or mitigate the damage of stress is really building a safe, stable, nurturing relationship with an adult. And can you talk a little bit about the importance that you've seen in your life, of that kind of relationship with an adult?
I can tell you one of the, I guess, most eye-opening and sort of disappointing experiences I had when I was working with children, because I did a lot of guardian ad litem work. And the guardian ad litem is really a best interest attorney, where you're meeting with the kids and you're trying to figure out what's missing. And one of the things that I saw very consistently in the kids that I were involved with, as I would ask them, like, who's your mentor? Who's the person that you look at and say, that's what I would like to do? And what really concerned me is a lot of those kiddos, they didn't have anybody. Every single person that you see out there that you admire, you respect, if you were to ask that person, one, they'd be happy to talk with you. But two, there would have been somebody in their life that would have made that difference, that you would have seen them, they would have seen that person and said, hey, how did you get to that point? So everybody out there, I would highly and seriously encourage you just to ask.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Thank you. Well, Pinal County Attorney Kent Volkmer, thanks so much for spending a few minutes with us today. Thanks very much, and I think we're out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob.
So hello again. We have with us today the Honorable Lawrence M. Wharton, who is a Pinal County Superior Court judge who currently has the assignment of being the judge for the Pinal County Drug Court. So Judge Wharton, please introduce yourself.
Sure, thank you. Yep, my name is Larry Wharton, and I am here at the Pinal County Superior Court. Presently, my assignment does certainly include the two drug courts that are operated through our facility here. One is centralized in Casa Grande, the other in Apache Junction. As far as background, look, I went to law school. I graduated from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and a long time ago in 1991. Made my way to Arizona in 2005. Worked for the county attorney's office until 2013, where I took the bench, and where I've worked since in a variety of assignments.
So in terms of the number of cases that you hear in Pinal County, how many would you say involve substance use and dependency? And I think the second part of that is how many youth do you see that are charged with crimes that you see that are also involved with substances?
Either directly or indirectly, I would say 75%, whether they're Chapter 34 offenses that are identified by the very nature of the charged crime as a drug crime, or are tangentially involved, either a property crime that's driven by a substance abuse addiction, or something of that nature I'm including in that group. The research that I've done would suggest there's roughly about 1,200 juvenile filings that are happen every year. Of that total 1,200, more than 50% have some substance abuse aspect to them.
Gotcha. So that sounds to me like that's a vast majority of the adult cases, and
Staggering majority. The single biggest contributor to the criminal justice system is substance abuse. I can say that without hesitation.
gotcha. That's crazy. So kind of maybe walk us through, what does that process look like to be involved with the court?
Sure. So just the thumbnail sketch of it, roughly, from contact to law enforcement to resolution of the matter, let's call it. Depending on the circumstances, if a person has contact with law enforcement and that person is taken into custody and booked into our Pinal County Adult Detention Center, person is seen within 24 hours and given a hearing date. Generally speaking, most cases, the vast majority, so more than 90%, resolve by way of a plea agreement in the adult set of circumstances. And those usually resolve within 90 days. In the juvenile end, I think that the process is designed to be more streamlined. The objective is certainly different. It's certainly driven by rehabilitation. It's certainly driven by the opportunity to get the youthful offender back onto a more structured program and to avoid the more harsher consequences of an adult conviction. That's no doubt that the juvenile system is designed to perform that function. So the length of the process is largely driven by the accused. The accused is given the constitutional right to have a trial. The state may in fact offer some plea agreement to resolve the case. And oftentimes that accused then has to sit and determine whether or not that's going to benefit them personally, or do they want to take the risk of taking their case to trial, which a conviction could very well mean a more lengthy, a harsher penalty. So yeah, these are hard questions to answer with grave consequences that are going to affect the future of this individual in the short term and the long term.
Gotcha. So in your opinion, how well do you think that the youth that you've seen, that you've worked with, how well do you think they handle the stressors of court?
I don't think that they actually handle it obviously any better than any adult would. I think once there's intervention from a court system, it's certainly a telltale sign that things in that person's life are not going in the trajectory that anyone wants to see them go. It's got to be incredibly stressful, and there has to be some recognition that they're immediately taking attractive options off the table for their future.
Yeah, gotcha. So as we wrap up, any final thoughts or any final advice for high school students?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question for a while, Mr. Sjogren, and I would submit that every single addict started out as some recreational user. And they're playing an awfully risky bet on them not falling victim to the addictive quality of whatever substance that they may choose to use. And it's a bad bet because that substance has a unique ability to shape the way that persons think, reducing the impact of all the brain power and cranial horsepower that they've been given.
Yeah.
And I would encourage them to stay present, and whatever decision that they ultimately decide to make in their life, they should make it with their eyes wide open. I would hate to have anyone say, well, I wish someone would have told me what this life was going to lead to.
Gotcha. Well, we sure appreciate your time today. So thank you, Judge Wharton. Hello again. We are now with Denise Smith, who is the Director of Juvenile Court Services for Pinal County. Denise, welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And I was wondering if you would tell us a little bit about the work you do and a little bit about your background.
Sure. I have been with Juvenile Court Services for going on 35 years. I started here in Pinal County in 1986. About 5 years ago, I was promoted to the Director of Juvenile Court Services. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that I oversee not just probation, but I also oversee the juvenile detention facility.
So talk to us a little more specifically about what you see in terms of how many convictions there are in Pinal County that involve youth and substances?
Juvenile Court Services last year received around 1,500 referrals from the local law enforcement agencies in Pinal County. Of those referrals, about 16% were drug-related offenses.
Okay.
57% of those were around the use of marijuana and possession, and approximately 9% of those was possession of use of narcotic drugs.
So you have diversion, you have probation, and then kind of the highest level is detention.
Yes, so the diversion is the lowest, the informal level. Then we have the probation, and kind of along with probation is detention. Do we have kids in our detention facility who are not on probation? Absolutely, we do. As a matter of fact, today we have more of those kids than we do kids on probation.
Gotcha. So between all three, how many youth are involved in diversion, probation, and detention in Pinal County?
So today, our probation numbers are fairly low. We have short of 300 youth on probation.
Gotcha. So could you hazard a guess and say how many of those kids are there because the crimes they have committed have involved substances?
I will say, on my experience, the last year up to present, 60 to 70% of the kids who are in detention are there, whether it's an original referral for drugs or substances in the facility, or it's a juvenile who has committed another offense, but substances is the underlying issue.
So typically, how long are juveniles involved with your services?
So with diversion, it's fairly short turnaround, is usually between 30 and 90 days.
Okay.
For youth who are placed on probation, youth placed on probation between 6 months to a year.
You've talked about diversion and probation, and I guess it would be great to give our audience a sense of what that looks like and feels like on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis.
So youth who are placed on probation are, they're required by the court and by probation directive to meet with their probation officer on a regular basis. And so once we have done the interview and determined the risk factor, then we also identify the needs. On top of the supervision, you also have juveniles who are required to attend counseling. Frequent and unannounced drug testing is involved, community service work. There's also fines and restitution if it's appropriate in the particular case. And there are also some cases where a juvenile is on probation and they're placed out of home in a residential treatment facility to address the substance abuse issues.
So next question, in your opinion, how well do you think the youth really genuinely handle the stressors of being involved with detention or probation or even diversion?
Well, it's never easy when you have an officer of the court giving a directive and basically telling you, what you can and cannot do for the next 9 months to a year or 6 months. Some youth do well with structure. I will say that. Some youth really kind of need that. But there are others that struggle with the idea that their freedom is taken away. And we do find that youth on probation for drug-related offenses tend to struggle the most.
When they complete juvenile court services, do you feel like they've changed as individuals, and do you think they're better able to deal with the stress they feel in their lives?
So yes, I do. I think, when we go back and look at our statistics, our recidivism rate is very low. And it's very nice to see that we have a good number of kids who, when they turn 18, it's like something clicks. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm an adult now and I need to change my behavior.
Gotcha.
But what they don't realize is that they now have a record. And I think that's important for our kids today to know that, if you get involved with the legal system, you're going to have a record. And that record you can take with you.
And I was going to say it impacts your employment options. It impacts your further education options. It even impacts your military options as
It
well.
absolutely does.
Gotcha. Any final words of advice for high school students?
Yeah, I actually have some. I think that set your goals early. Start thinking about your future now. Have hope in yourself and surround yourself with people who believe in you and have hope in you.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Denise, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
You're
Take care.
welcome.
Thank
you for having me.
Good afternoon, everyone. We now have Jacqueline Smith, who is the clinical coordinator at Horizon Health and Wellness, with us. Welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon. I am Jacqueline Smith. Obviously, I'm a clinical coordinator at Horizon Health and Wellness. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. And I've been at Horizon now for almost 2 years. And it is my joy to work in mental health. We provide substance abuse education. We provide substance abuse. We have the intensive outpatient program, also known as IOP, for some IOT. And then we also provide aftercare, which is a kind of, once you've completed IOP and once you've completed SOP, it kind of allows you to kind of come on your own when you feel like you need that reiteration of the program or just some additional support from us. We allow that, and we do have that. We also have, for our youth particularly, is a substance abuse education, which I think is incredible. Just providing them the information and education around the different substances so they can have that as a takeaway.
How many of that 3,000, that number, are people that have been involved with substance use disorder or misuse or dependency?
Oh, wow. I mean, this is probably going to blow your mind. Probably 75% of the base has had substance abuse, some form or another.
So of that 75%, how many are kids?
I would say about probably 1,000 of them, I would say, are children.
Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So just to talk, give us a little bit of background on, kids come into your facility. What's the length of time that they're involved with you?
So typically, once a client is referred to us and it has to do with substance, I do want to kind of make a point that the increase in clients that are children, and I should say children, because all of them are not teenagers. I mean, I would love to tell you that. It's not factual. I mean, we've had 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds that we are encountering substances with. So that being said, as soon as they come in, they do the intake. What we're also finding is a lot of them are coming to us through probation. And that's a whole, it's a different ballgame in and of itself.
So I guess, so you see these students come in, and I guess I'm curious, like, what's their state of mind?
So most of them come in denial.
Okay.
Because it's usually they've gotten caught. It's not like they've surrendered and said, hey, I think I have an issue. It's usually the vape pens and things have been discovered at school or at home. So it's usually from the school, or it is from the parents that have brought them in for the intakes, or probation have sent them for that. And a lot of times they're saying that it's fine. We're finding kids with meth. We're finding kids with fentanyl, and it's a lot, to process sometimes, because I think sometimes, even though we're here clinically, therapeutically trained, I think sometimes when an 8-year-old walks in and you realize they've used meth, it takes you back.
County Attorney Kent Volkmer said that when they've become involved with substance misuse and dependency, that every one of the adults and every one of the kids that they work with don't want to be there.
Nope.
If they had a do-over, they wouldn't choose this path. What do you see at your level?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that, every single day. And that's why I think, and I think you and I have talked about it before, we got to be on the prevention end of this.
Yeah.
And I think what we're not really understanding is that we need to go earlier. We need to go younger.
So let me ask this question. In your opinion, how well do young people handle the stressors associated with treatment and recovery?
In my professional opinion, I don't think they handle it very well. I think that a lot of times by the time the different stressors show up that are associated with them actually getting treatment and or recovery, and because of their age and their lack of life skills and experience, and even just having general basic skills and tools, they don't possess it.
And would you say also that for the kids that kind of the root cause of all of this is some level of unhappiness?
Yes, and I say that because a lot of times it'll take us a long time or over a period of months of seeing them. All of a sudden, they walk in and say, you know what, I never told you this, but boom. And then that's when it all starts making sense.
So as we kind of close out here, any advice for high school kids?
The main thing I would say is don't be embarrassed to reach out for help when you need it. Be strong enough to reach out for help from an adult that you trust.
Right on. Well, appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. We are back with Adela Cordova, who is the co-founder of Hope Medical Clinic here in Casa Grande.
Hello. I founded Hope Medical Clinic along with my partner, Dr. Robert Casa. And I've been in medicine since around 96, specifically in substance abuse since around 2000.
So tell us a little bit about what you do at Hope Medical Clinic.
So we're an addiction medicine clinic. So whatever
Okay.
the addiction is what we treat, whether it be
Gotcha.
opiates, alcohol, tobacco, methamphetamine, any of those. We really, I think that predominantly it would be those four.
And let me ask this question. How many of those are young people?
Ugh,
Under
50%
25?
of them, unfortunately.
50%?
Right
Holy
around 50%,
smokes.
yeah.
50% of
time-
your 50% of your client base is under 20 years old.
Under
Wow.
20 years old.
Mm-hmm. So when they come to you, can you say, you know, what kind of condition are they in? You know, mentally, emotionally, physically, kind of, you know, what is there, you know, kind of a profile, if you will?
So the categories, really the profiles would be for those that are in use. They're just starting out recreationally. There are not very many of those. Then we go into the category of abuse, which is a much larger population. Those guys.
So let me interrupt and just abuse is framed as the consumption of a substance that interferes with major life activities like holding a job or, you know, being responsible, you know, following the laws, that kind of thing.
Yeah, abuses could be something as simple. I mean, it's very broad before you reach the dependence part, but abuse could be something as to, say, for instance, we give a prescription that says take 1 a day and they take 2 or 3 a day because it makes them feel better. So that would be in the abuse stage. And once they start abusing, so our bodies are very smart. Our bodies are very smart. Our bodies say, I like that feeling, you know, I really like that feeling. Hit me again, give me another one. And then that becomes the vicious cycle of trying to chase. So then after they're done kind of just abusing it a little bit, what happens? Tolerance, you know, the body is very smart. The body says, oh, 1 or 3 or 5 pills doesn't work for me anymore. Either give me some more pills or give me something stronger.
Yeah.
Enter fentanyl. Then you get to the dependent stage, And once you get once you get to the dependent stage, then that's when you're in my office. So when they come to my office and they are dependent, that's where we step in with medication-assisted treatment to stabilize the patient.
So in your treatment, so you have people that are dependent on whatever the substance. So then with your medically assisted treatment, you provide a substitute legal medication that can be prescribed by a doctor that gets folks off the possibly illegal stuff, or the opioid or whatever it is, and then you like taper them down and get them off the legal substance, and at the same time you are providing like counseling support or therapy services to help people get their lives back in order. Is that kind of the description of how you do what you do?
Yep, that's pretty much exactly it.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So given that so many of your patients are young people, how would you say that they handle the stressors of addiction?
Well, when they're in my office, they're not handling stress at all. Initially, when they come in, we have to stabilize them. We give them about 30 days to get stable, meaning they get the medication, they're not getting it off the street. After that happens, 90% of the time we have to force them to do counseling or to do behavioral health or groups. Once we get them in there, it opens them up to vulnerability. We get into the pain, and talk therapy works. I don't care what anybody says. Talk therapy works. When you can sit someone down and hear their story and they feel that you care about them enough to even hear that story, it works.
Yeah.
So if we do our job right, and I take that very, very seriously, and we provide that little bit of hope, hence Hope Medical Clinic, they start doing the work themselves. They have the magic within themselves because you know what? We believe in them and we believe that they can do it.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Adela. And
Appreciate it. Keep
right.
doing the great job you do, Bob.
Take care.
You too. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. We're back again. And now we have Kayla Key with us, and she is the Justices Service Coordinator with Transitional Living Center Recovery. So welcome, Kayla.
So my name is Kayla Key. I am a recovering addict of 9.5 years. With my company, which is Transitional Living Center Recovery, I am now the Justice Services Coordinator, where I am able to help young adults that are currently facing charges of their own in the jail system and walking them through the legal courts and the legal systems that they're facing today. We also serve the homeless and anybody that's in the community as adults that are facing addiction or mental health disorders. We also serve anywhere from 500 to 600 members a year and getting them the support and services that they may have never known that's been out in the community.
So you're really, you're kind of like the end of the process of, justice involved and then treatment and recovery. And you're really kind of in the business of helping people rebuild their lives day by day.
Yes.
Okay. And you said that you serve 500 to 600 people a year. So that's residential treatment. You serve 500 to 600 people a year. And I'm curious, how many of those people are young adults?
We would serve approximately half of that, which would be around 250 young adults. They have started using substances at a young age. Some have reported 7, 8 years old. And they were more peer pressured in by a family member. It was in the residence or home that they were currently residing at, and they were never able to identify that.
So let me ask a question. Typically, how long do young adults in your program? How long are they there with you in the Transitional Living Center?
They stay typically in our program anywhere from 12 to or 9 to 15 months. So they'll start their day with attending a meeting and setting their little goal for the day of what they want to accomplish for that day. After that group is over, then they start working either with individual peer support on their goal for the day, or they'll attend a group meeting, and we have group meetings that run from 8 to 4 at the facility.
So it sounds like, you know, they hang with you for many months,
Mhm.
and you're doing programming with them pretty much throughout the day. And it sounds
Yes,
probably like just about every day.
every single day, Bob.
How well would you say that the individuals really handle the daily stressors of recovery and transition in your program?
Yeah, so individuals, we all walk different, we all walk the same life, but we all are able to handle the stressors, and especially in recovery, at different pace.
Mhm.
Many of them coming into the program, when they first get there, it's more that they were forced into it by the legal system at this point. It does take a few months for our members to really identify what the reality and what it is that they're facing.
Yeah.
With either their substance abuse, mental health disorder, or the legal system.
So it takes them a while to dig. Would you also say that uh, there is something that happened, something that has caused some tremendous amount of stress in their lives, and that stress that they haven't been able to work through?
Yeah, some of them aren't able to identify what it is, the reasoning why they use substances. They say that they use them to numb the feelings, to get the euphoria, to no longer deal with life as an individual, but they don't realize that at a young age, they were faced with trauma, whether it be mental, physical, emotional. A lot of times, these people are very agitated and upset at the beginning, but towards the transition phase and the long term of their recovery and sobriety is when they start to thank you, and they start to realize that they're not alone in this, they're not alone in their recovery, and they won't ever be alone. When you become addicted to a substance and you've been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, it's not something that goes away in 5-10 years. It's something that you have to work on every single day of your life and for the rest of your life, because you never know what you may face in the future that can possibly put you back to your addiction.
Gotcha. Any final thoughts, any advice you want to share with high school students that are listening to this?
I would just say for high school students is that with me starting out at a young age faced with addiction, and I was in a dark, deep hole, is that you always want to reach out to your parents. You want to reach out to one of your family members that you're very close with, and letting them know what you have been faced with. You got to learn to not shut people out that are willing to be there, and that are there to love you.
Kayla Key, Transitional Living Center Recovery, thank you so much for participating in our panel discussion today. And I think we've learned a lot from you today, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep. So there you have it, everyone. You've heard from all of our panelists, and they've shared their thoughts and ideas and opinions about what they see and what happens to the people that they see go through the system, and just kind of what the impact is on their body, mind, and spirit. And I think it's got to be really crystal clear that this involvement, being justice involved and being involved in treatment and recovery that really can be lifelong, is something that is probably best avoided. And you know, it's all about the choices we make ultimately. So I think the question remains is, what's it going to be for you? What's your path? What decision will you make? What kind of life do you want to live? And where do you want to go with it? And, you know, obviously there are lots of paths to choose, but I think that, you know, the two big ones that we're talking about today are working at getting better every day. You know, this thing about living life, it's something that you got to do every day. It's a choice that you got to make every day. And it's something that you've got to work on if you're going to work on getting better every day. So it's about positive self-regulation. It's about finding a time to be alone and relax and concentrate and plan and think for yourself. I think also getting better every day is about making connections. It's about having great friends that you can really, really tell your innermost secrets and thoughts, and they will support you. It's also finding about those caring, positive, nurturing relationships that make a huge difference. You know, the adults in your lives. You know, we don't all have moms and dads. We don't all have aunts and uncles, but we all have adults in our lives, and we've got to learn to trust. We've got to learn to share, and we've got to learn to let go of that adversity that we feel in our lives if we're ever going to move from there, if we're ever going to move forward. And I think most importantly, you know, thinking about this concept of getting better every day, when the body's in balance, we have access to our full potential. When you get enough sleep, when you eat right and exercise and relax and have fun and have good friends and all of those kinds of things, when life is in balance, you really give yourself an opportunity to get better every day. The other path is really about avoiding adversity. It's about this overactivated stress response system that has you in this mode of working from the back of your brain, the Hulk mode of fight, flight, or freeze. And the funny thing about the stress response system is that the more it's overactivated, the harder it is to come down, and the harder it is to get out of being and having an overactivated system. I think also when you're avoiding adversity, you feel a great deal of shame. There's a lot of guilt. You want to hide it from people. You know, whatever happened, you know, whatever the thing in your life that happened, whatever that adverse thing is, you got to find a way to process. You got to find a way to let it go, to move on, to move forward. And also, when folks avoid adversity, it really can be about dependence and addiction and abuse. And I think that's a really important thing. And it doesn't always happen that way, but it often happens that way. And you've heard from a panel of experts today that have talked about this and have talked about this impact. So kind of the final slide here is just what are the best ways to avoid the path of letting the adversity in your life dominate your life? How do you take the path where you can, you know, take this adversity that you've had and turn it into strength? Take this adversity that you've had and process it and not let it trap you. How do you do that? It may sound simplistic, but I think there are just genuinely some really, really basic suggestions. Eat right, you know, eat real food, not always fast food. Eat real food, eat vegetables, eat good meat, get plenty of sleep, get some exercise, relax, reflect, set goals. You know, set stretch goals. What are your goals for this semester? How good are your grades really going to be? And what choices are you going to make to get to those grades? build your skills, work on improving your ability to do math and your ability to do reading and writing. Share your thoughts, feelings, and ideas with caring adults, and find those people in your lives and nurture that relationship. It's so important. It's so, so important. Share your thoughts, feelings, and ideas with good friends. Get together with people and build positive support systems. And you can do that. You can do that informally with a group of friends. You can do it as a class. You can do it as a homeroom. There are just lots and lots of ways that you can develop those positive connections with other people. And it's going to seem a little risky at first, and it's going to seem a little scary at first. But just like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And that's important. I think another great way to maintain those connections and build those connections is to get involved. Student activities, clubs, sports, church. Get involved in something in the city. There's a youth commission. You know, there's just lots and lots of stuff to do out there, but you got to make up your mind and you got to do it. And if you're really beleaguered by this adversity in your life, if you're really weighed down and you just can't move it, seek counseling, seek real help. I think that's important, and you can make that request. You can make that request. And all of the adults in your life will help you figure that out. Last thought, folks, is that you know, again, it's about adversity, it's about path, and what happens to adversity that you haven't processed, what happens to the adversity in your life that you hang on to, what happens to the adversity in your life that you won't let go, is that it can become toxic. And when it becomes toxic, that's when the most damage happens. And when it becomes toxic, that's when the real problems with dependence, addiction, and abuse really kick in. So I genuinely encourage you to talk to your teachers, talk to the adults in your lives, talk to your friends, and really start getting yourself back in balance so that you can live a full life, you can accomplish whatever your dreams are, and you can be successful. Thanks, everybody. This is Bob Sjogren, Casa Grande Alliance, signing out. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions or if you want to do any follow-up. I'd be more than happy to chat with you. Take care. Hope to see you soon.